Should the Saints fire Dennis Allen? Is New Orleans at point of no return? This is, after further review, Matt Moscona and Ryan Theriot, the Riot on the right. All right, so this question is being posed quite a bit, obviously. Should the Saints fire Dennis Allen? Should the Saints fire Mickey Loomis? LOL, can't do that. It's a lifetime contract. He's not getting fired. Should the Saints fire Gail Benson? LOL, can't do that. Not going to happen. What should happen? It's point of contention right now with Saints fans. I'll tell you this right now. I don't think there's any way on earth that Dennis Allen is retained after this season. Would it surprise me if the Saints didn't fire him mid-season? No, it wouldn't surprise me. I don't think Mickey wants to do that. I think some teams philosophically, Dallas is a team that's like this. I think some teams philosophically just don't do that. They just don't fire. They don't fire coaches mid-season, even if they should. So, someone will have to double check me. But Jim Haslett, the last year of his tenure, as bad as it was, he was allowed to finish out the year, and the Saints seem to operate and do business like that. So more of a cultural thing, I guess. Whether it's right or wrong is a whole different story, or whether it's whether Allen should be afforded that. But I think right now that we're a couple of days, we are about 5 days since the Broncos game. And Dennis Allen, last I checked, is still the head coach of the New Orleans Saints, which means more than likely he will continue to be the head coach of the New Orleans Saints. It's hard to imagine they fire him if they weren't going to fire him the day after the abomination on Thursday night. So now what does that mean for long term? Long term, I don't think it really changes much of anything. I think long term, you are still, well, let's talk short term first. Let's talk this season first. I think there is still an idea in the locker room or the front office or whatever that if the Saints get dramatically healthy, which you would think they will in the next couple of weeks, if Derek Carr is back, Chris Olave is back, Cesar Ruiz is back, Taysom Hill is back, in a couple of weeks Eric McCoy is back, the schedule does get easier. Maybe the thought is, well, we might as well play out this season, chase after that 9 wins, chase after 8, 9 wins, 10 wins. 8's a little ridiculous. You don't really chase after 8 wins, but chase after 9 wins, chase after 10 wins. See if you can't get lucky. Atlanta just dropped a game against Seattle. And by dropped, I mean got smoked. Tampa Bay plays the Ravens on Monday night. So, things are up in the air. So I guess they're thinking, we'll kind of hold it together. Let us get healthy. See if we can't get back in that mix of 9 wins, 10 wins, go on a magical run, whatever. If not, go ahead and start cleaning house. Go ahead and start cutting contracts. Go ahead and start cutting coaches, and that is Dennis Allen. So let's go ahead and react to what Matthew and the Riot have to say, like only I can do.
I got a guy in studio here that played professional sports, was on some good teams, and was on some bad teams as well. The big question everybody's asking now that you've lost 5 in a row, that hasn't happened since Sean Payton's last year. And not just that you've lost, you're starting to check off these historical boxes, right? One more time of allowing – if the Saints allow 25 points to the Chargers a week from Sunday, that'll match the franchise record for most consecutive games allowing 25. In 15 years in New Orleans, Sean Payton only –
Is that a plate of food? I just noticed that. Is that Texas toast and fried like chicken tenders or something in the middle of the desk? Unbelievable power move. I mean, can you imagine just smelling Texas toast and fried chicken the whole time you're doing the show, or fried shrimp or whatever that is? I mean, I'll give them this. I mean, there's a whole meal. We got a Bud Light, we got a 32-ounce water. I mean, you could get a full meal, a lunch, a pair of shoes, and 6 different hat options in the studio.
Lost by 20 at home twice in 15 years. Dennis Allen, Saints have now done it back-to-back weeks, actually within a span of 5 days. You're starting to get to some historical significance, which begs the question, if they quit on Dennis Allen. Alvin Kamara was asked if the team is still supporting Dennis Allen. Let's do it. Short answer, but here's what he said.
That's not a question for me to answer. I don't got nothing for that. You said the team, as in the locker room? I mean, we're here. We go to work every day. We got to work. We just got to keep working and figure out what we got to do to put string wins together.
Okay.
Yeah, I mean, he said, I don't have anything for that. I'm not. He basically dismissed it. Basically said, I'm not answering that. It's a non-starter. Yes, like we're here. We got to find wins. We got to find ways to win. We can't focus on quitting on our coach or any of that stuff. And I've talked about this at length, but I think in certain situations, yeah, players do quit. Last game of the season, whatever, take plays off, make business decisions, sure, but you just can't convince me that an entire team or an entire defense decides to quit on their own team, on their fans, on their teammates, on their whatever, at halftime of a divisional game at home when you're winning. And here's something that no one wants to talk about, but I will, because we're just on a whole nother level. I think that is the security blanket for fans or analysts or whatever to take the onus off of the players. If you say, well, the players have quit, they've quit on Dennis Allen, then you basically absolve the players of any responsibility of giving up 7 yards per rush and 7 yards per play every single game for 5 straight weeks. So I'm do the opposite. I think it's too easy. I think it's way too easy to just say, no, the players are good. They just quit. I don't think the players are good. I don't think the players have shown me anything in 5 weeks for where I can sit here and say they're good. Because here's the situations where you're telling me that the players quit. 1 possession to go to beat Philadelphia. You're telling me they quit right there? 1 possession to go to beat Atlanta. Did they quit there? Up 3 at halftime against a divisional rival at home in a must-win game. Did they quit there? Against their former head coach on prime time Thursday Night Football. They rolled in there and quit? Because that seems like that seems a little bit much. Seems a little bit much. Okay? So let's not give them the security blanket and the parachute and say, no, guys, we think y'all are great. We just think y'all quit on Dennis Allen. It's Dennis Allen's fault. I think at some point you got to hold the players responsible.
I hear that as someone who's never in a locker room, and he's asked, is the team supporting Dennis Allen? And you heard what he said. Like, he didn't say yes.
He said, I don't have time for that question. Like he said, I don't have time for that. I got nothing for that. We got to win games.
He said, we got to find a way to string wins together. I read that as, hell no, we don't support Dennis Allen. Like, they know what's happening, and he's lost their trust and their confidence. You heard that. What do you think?
Yeah, 100%. I mean, if it would have been yeah, we support him, he would have said that. I mean, he would have came out and defended his guy. That's the professional, nice way of not throwing your coach under the bus. The interesting thing is, I mean, it's so many in football. Football is different than baseball. Baseball, it's always like one of the position coaches goes. In football, it's like always seems like the head guy's the one that that takes it pretty hard.
Well, first you get rid of the coordinators, which we already did. Bad news Bears is that Dennis is the defensive coordinator for all intents and purposes. And the defense is right now absolute ass. It's absolute garbage. Okay? I mean, if it was any more ass, it would be on the Hip Hop Gone Wild subreddit. Now, don't Google that, ladies and gentlemen. That's a deep cut. And that's not for me. Okay? Obviously. But don't Google that. Okay? But I mean, the coordinators and position coaches are kind of the same thing, and they're running out of coordinators to cut for the New Orleans Saints.
Well, you mean like gets fired?
Yeah.
Well, the thing
you
here
don't
is
see an offensive coordinator leave in the middle of a year.
Yeah, no, that happens. Like, they get
happens
fired
all the time.
Yeah, like coaches will. I mean, I mentioned in 2015,
the heck is this?
The Saints fired Rob Ryan after they got blown out by Washington. Things had really started to deteriorate.
Yeah,
they lost
coordinators are always the first one to go.
17 or something like that, and they fired him. So I think that could happen. Here's the problem: Dennis Allen is the defensive coordinator. Like, I know Joe Woods has the title, but Dennis Allen's the one actually calling all the defensive plays.
Yeah, Oklahoma just fired their offensive coordinator after getting embarrassed back-to-back weeks. Well, they got embarrassed all season, but so yeah, it happens all the time.
And everything like that. He's not going to fire himself. So will management fire him? It doesn't seem like that's the case.
No.
So what do you think?
At this point, unless there's another, like, at some point, you got to do what you got to do. So, like, if we go out to the Chargers and lose 43-0, at some point, like, you got to get rid of the guy. But I think right now, Mickey's holding on to hope that when everyone comes back from injury, and for what I'm hearing, we're going to be relatively healthy against the Chargers. You know, like we'll have a lot of the guys back. So I guess the thought is, you know, if we go win that game, win a couple more games here and there, all of a sudden, season's not exactly gone yet. Now, you can dispute that, but I think that's kind of the line of thinking right now. And to a certain extent, like, what does firing Dennis Allen get you? Right? Like, because I think a lot of people say, well, the season's over, so fire him. You know, but I guess the other way of looking at that is, well, if the season's over, like, why fire him? You know, just like let it go, let it happen for the rest of the year, and then we'll figure out things for next year. So if it's a lost season, you know, it's like, if it's a lost season, it is what it is. So, you know, I mean, I can see both sides of, like, should you fire him now versus fire him after the season? If it was me, I would probably fire him now. But I'm looking at it more of, like, save the fan base, you know, for the fan base. And if I'm looking at it from a strictly business side of things, I might not be looking at it like that.
Like, were you ever part of a situation where there was a managerial change in season?
Mm-mm.
Was there ever a situation where...
Here's something to think about. All right, pretend you're at your job. And let's say your job, let's say all of us work as line cooks, short order cooks, okay, in a kitchen. And all of us hate the head chef. And now imagine we're out there and we're just serving raw food and, you know, moldy food and undercooked this and overcooked that. And people are sending it back. They're eating it. They're getting sick, you know. And they're like, well, what are y'all doing? Y'all don't know how to cook? Y'all don't know how to cook the eggs? Y'all don't know how to cook the steak? Everything's undercooked or overcooked. And if we said, well, can't blame us. Like, we hate the head chef. And so, okay, well, that's fine, but you still have a job to do. Like, you're still serving me overcooked and undercooked food for 5 straight weeks. Like, at some point, you can't just be bad at your job every single time you have to do your job. And then just say, well, I mean, come on. You expect me to not serve you undercooked meat? I hate the head chef. You know, come on. I mean, is it really my fault? I'm disgruntled with the head chef. You know, like, when you put it like it just doesn't make any sense.
Was I? When Dusty got fired, or when? No, I was not.
Because you were on some bad teams in Chicago. You're on some good teams. You're on playoff teams in Chicago,
Yeah.
but you're on bad teams too. Did it ever get to that point?
Yeah.
Like, what's it like internally whenever you have those really bad skids?
Oh, it's miserable. I mean, just going to the field, going to the complex, the facility, you know, yeah, it's two totally different things, but it's the same in a sense of, like, you show up and you know that you're not going to win. Like, you know, and you know you have nothing to play for, and you're just hoping to get to the end of the season as fast as you can. You know, the manager or the coach is, you know, a dead man walking, basically. He's not going to be there the following year. You hear the boos. I mean, that was a thing in Chicago. You know, you hear the boos, and you're out there trying, and you know, but
Think about how miserable it would be in baseball, where you have to play every day, every other day. You go on like 20 game stretches of playing. You know, you'll play 29 games in a month. Like, at least the Saints only have to play once a week.
it is not a fun, enjoyable scenario whatsoever.
So Kamara, you mentioned you hear the boos. So Kamara, after the game, was asked about the fans booing and then the fans leaving. This is what he said.
I'm going to get away from your question for a second and just say it's a couple of unacceptable things going on. One, our play is unacceptable. And 2, the dome being empty or emptying out. I think I saw some fans leaving the second quarter. That's unacceptable. But I don't blame the fans. It's on us because they come to see us play and perform. And when we don't perform, that's the results you get. But I've never experienced that. And if I was a fan, I'll leave too. You know what I'm saying? Because it's just not good enough right now. For whatever reason, we got to figure it out.
I think the hardest part for guys like Kamara, Cam Jordan, some of these veterans, they were here for the good stuff.
Oh, yeah.
Right? Like they were
yeah.
here
Absolutely.
in the playoff runs, the NFC Championship, the division titles, where the Saints were a contender every year. And this is the first time for Alvin to experience something like this. Now, I know he was there for the 5 straight losses in Sean's last year, but this is different. To be at 2-5 through week 7 is a totally different feeling to know, like, you haven't even hit your bye yet, and your season's cooked. Like, you're done. They're playing out the string. So it's very...
Well, it's also different because, like, like Alvin's playing on not a contract. So Alvin's also thinking, like, man, this is it. Like, this is the last hurrah in New Orleans. Cam Jordan's thinking, like, I'm about to retire. Like, this is my last season. Something like all that does start factoring into those players. The players who were on those other teams and, who had the former glory and saw what it could be. And, for those guys, it's like, man, this is how we're going out. Like, damn.
Very unfamiliar for these veteran guys. For the young guys, they don't know any different. This is the only thing that they've experienced in the NFL. So I look at this just as a very tricky situation because it's unfamiliar for everybody around the organization, but it's part and parcel with what happened when you maintained and tried to continue the previous era, where you maintained Pete Carmichael and Dennis Allen and a lot of the veteran players. You just try to transition everything seamlessly. And clearly, the point that I've made for a couple of years about Dennis Allen is, like, not every lieutenant's meant to be a general. He's a great defensive coordinator. His defense is playing like crap right now, but he's a terrible head coach. We have a large enough sample now. He's pushing 80 games as a head coach.
I think what Allen has proven as a head coach is that he can't get himself and the team out of a funk. Like, if things are going bad, he kind of just rides it till the wheels fall off. Like, he's not the guy who's going to go into a bye week, figure things out, reset the team, get everyone's head back to where they need to be, and then save the season. He's just, if things are good, cool. If they're bad, they're going to be bad. And you see some coaches like Jim Harbaugh is really good at that, where Jim Harbaugh is really good at, taking his team on a bye week and going somewhere else, or staying out west for a West Coast trip, and he'll stay out there with his team, and they kind of reset the season and kind of get back in the right mindset, and like certain players can just do that. Mike Tomlin's really good at that. Allen is not that kind of guy. He does not have that as a head coach. Like, Dan Campbell is good at that, and that's that man manager kind of coach. And I've talked about this a million times, but right now in the NFL, it's a thinking man's game. Okay, so, like, if you have a Dan Campbell who is not an X's and O's guy, he better be one hell of a man manager. He better be one hell of a roster guy. He better be able to control the locker room, get the locker room up when they need to be up, calm them down when they need to be calmed down, and everything in between. Campbell can do that. He's got Ben Johnson. Okay. Tomlin has proven, like, he's not an X's and O's guy. He's not great at situational game stuff, but he's one hell of a guy when it comes to leading that locker room and instilling that culture and that standard. You go somewhere like Dallas, Mike McCarthy is none of those things, right? And he doesn't have the coordinators to do that. He did when Dan Quinn was there. So you can kind of see, like, the problem right now is that the Saints, Allen is not that guy. And we don't have enough of a sample size to say that Kubiak is good enough as an OC to cover up. Now, granted, Kubiak is dealing with a lot of injuries, and the offense really hadn't been that big of a problem. But, Allen just doesn't have that Dan Campbell, Mike Tomlin, Jim Harbaugh capability to save the season once it's starting to spiral.
He's 26-51 as a head coach. So I look at this and I go, there's nothing really still to be answered.
No,
you know what I mean?
He is.
Right.
About Dennis Allen. Like, we know what he is. So what do you do? Like, do you make the change now in season? Do you wait for the bye?
I would get rid of him if it was me. I would have fired him after Denver, because one, I would have sent a message to the fans and sent a message to the locker room of, like, this is not acceptable. We are not going to ride this ship to the bottom. We are going to try and save the season, whatever. Because also you have 10 days to rest, so it's the longest period of time that you can do this. And even more importantly than anything, it can't get worse. If the defense was like 3rd, 4th, 5th, 6th, top 10, whatever, then it's like, well, you don't want to fire him because, I mean, at least the defense is playing good. Like, whatever, it is what it is. Like Matthias said, this is a historically bad Saints defense. So, really no harm, no foul in getting rid of him. I mean, what are they going to do? Get demoted? What are they going to do? Go to the SEC? What are they going to do? Be 33rd all of a sudden? Like, the defense is on record pace. So, see you later. I would have fired him.
Do you wait to the end of the season? Like, what do you think?
I mean, I don't. I would say bang him now, and start the reboot
brother.
process. But you're really not going to get any of that until the offseason. Like, whoever you bring on is going to be just there. I don't see how that really does anything.
Yeah, I do agree with that, except for except for how he started it. But I do agree with that, where it's like, what's it really going to do? You may get a bit of a jump, but I mean, you're not going to bring in somebody. So like Darren Rizzi or whoever's the interim head coach, and I mean, it is what it is. Like, is that going to solve the problems? No. Is it going to make people feel better because heads are rolling? During a 5-game losing streak, it might make the fans feel better, but you can't always make decisions like that completely reliant on how it impacts the fans.
You keep him there. Plus, I want him to keep losing. I mean, I would like him to lose every game from here on out and see if we can draft as high as they possibly can.
That's a real thought, I think, in some places like the Raiders. Like, I saw somewhere where they were saying, like, you got to get Antonio Pierce out of there. And then some people who follow the Raiders were saying, no, keep him in. If you keep him in, it's the best chance we have of, like, a soft tank, because he just kind of inherently is tanking these games by some of these decisions to kick field goals and all that stuff. And man, oh man, did I call that. Whew. Y'all remember before the season where I was saying that Antonio Pierce was a horrific head coach, and I had all the comments about how he's a vibes coach and how the players play hard for him and the players love him and they'll run through a brick wall for him and whatever else. And I was saying, the interim vibes head coach thing does not work out. It never works out. You got to be able to make those situational decisions. And he is bad. He might be all-time bad. He's up there. He is up there all-time bad with the situational spot. Brutal for the Raiders. Brutal for the Saints right now.
So no, that's why I would like to keep him. But you don't see like an opportunity for the thing to turn around. You've got
this year.
Yeah, this year's. Yeah, you've got your quarterback's injured, and even when he was healthy, he wasn't great. There's not a whole lot of playmakers on the team. I mean, it wasn't there. But look, this isn't new. We knew this last year. I mean, like, when they decided to keep him last year, they should have fired his ass last year. I mean, they should have cleaned house, all of them.
But he did have the ace up his sleeve, where it's like, no, the defense is sweet. And that's what we said all year last year. And that's why it kind of surprises me when people are like, well, how come you didn't want to fire Dennis Allen last year, but you do now? It's like, that's the simplest math problem in the world. Because last year we were a top 10 defense, and this year we are 32nd. Like, what do you mean? I mean, last year, I'm sure people in Cleveland loved Kevin Stefanski. He was the coach of the year. This year, they want him gone. Like, things change. When you don't have results, when you're not bringing in the results, again, the Saints tied for the division last year. They won 9 games. They had one of the worst offensive coordinators that's ever walked a sideline. They had a top 10 defense. Like, there was stuff there. If you have a 32nd defense and you're the defensive coordinator, yeah, get him out of there. If we had the 32nd ranked offense and our EPA numbers were horrible and all that stuff, if Clint Kubiak had the same numbers that Pete Carmichael did, I'd be saying to fire him too. Like, at some point, it's a results-driven league. And yeah, not all wins and not all losses are fair. But when you're looking at the deep analytics like we do, and you're ranking 32nd, historically bad, breaking records, yeah, go. Just like the line cooks in the Skrmetta 4 I gave earlier, where, look, man, you serve 20 undercooked steaks. You're poisoning people. People are throwing up in the parking lot. I'm gonna have to move you off. I'm gonna have to get you off the line, my man. I mean, at some point,
from management all the way down, started the thing over. It's too many relationships, too many friendships that are there. Like, that's the issue. The issue is not trying to win the football game. It's gotten too close. And they have not had enough success to justify that in recent years.
I don't agree.
And so
with
you got to blow the whole thing up. I'm not saying it's easy to do. Doing it in the middle of a season, though, sucks for those players. I can promise you that.
But could I argue to the we're gonna go, but could I argue to the contrary that doing it in the middle of the season might actually inject some life? Like sometimes
For what, though?
Sometimes you get
See, this is great. This is fantastic. This is the fan. This is the outside person expecting it's going to inject life and do whatever, and then an actual player is telling you like, no, it sucks. Like that is not what we want to hear. We don't want to. Not great, right? So this is interesting to hear from Ryan.
Get an interim bump, right? And it's just a different voice, and you can refocus. I mean, look, we saw this. I know it's college to pro. It's not the same thing. But in 2016, they fired Les Miles at the end of September. Ed Ogeron came in, and immediately there was some new energy and new life around that football team. Now, I understand it's college, it's the NFL. It's not the same thing.
Well, I think also you have to question, like, and this is something that Mickey would know, but you really do have to know, like, do the players really hate this guy? Like with the Raiders and Josh McDaniels, they actively hated him. I mean, there was conversations of basically almost fights in the locker room with players and McDaniels. So it's a case-by-case basis. If they actually hate Dennis Allen and they despise him, then yeah, there probably will be a bump. But if they don't hate him, then there's not going to be a bump.
I do understand that. But a year ago, Antonio Pierce was named the interim with the Raiders, and they had success. He ended up getting the job. Now that doesn't look like that was a great decision. We'll see. The sample size is
No, he's horrible head coach.
Small, but sometimes maybe it is an acknowledgement from the front office to say this is unacceptable and we're trying to find a way to win now.
Who on that staff would be the guy that would come in?
That's the great question.
I mean, it's not like there's some superstar sitting there that.
I mean, there's two options that you'd look at.
It's not Kubiak, I'll tell you that.
I mean, Joe Woods, who's the defensive coordinator, usually you would elevate a coordinator, right? So Joe Woods is the defensive coordinator, then Clint Kubiak is the offensive coordinator. And so would you give the young offensive guy?
You definitely don't do that because you kind of got to protect Kubiak. Like, if you elevate Kubiak to the interim head coach, then what are you going to do next year? Because if you're going to do that, your plan better be like, well, we might make him the head coach. And I don't think that would be a good idea, and I don't think that's even in the plans. I think you elevate someone who has no chance of being the head coach. So Darren Rizzi, Joe Woods, elevate them, let them kind of substitute teacher this thing, and then you can actually bring in your tried and true next head coach. But I don't think teams like that. It's kind of counterintuitive. You know what I mean? Like the idea that, hey, the locker room is trashed, the culture is garbage. The results are horrible. Let's elevate someone from inside. It's like, well, that seems like a bad idea. It seems like that's part of the issue. Like, that doesn't seem like it's fixing anything.
From the McVay-Shanahan tree, an opportunity. And we see it. I mean, we see young guys who have that offensive background become head coaches, and maybe it would take someone youthful and energetic to an offensive-minded instead of the defensive-minded coach. The opportunity to get it going. And look, if you blew out Dennis Allen, you still got Joe Woods there, who is the defensive coordinator in title. He's not calling the defense. Maybe it's an opportunity to get him, but it would be
Yeah, he's not even calling the defense. Like, imagine that. Be like, hey, man, you're the head coach now. I know you're not really doing anything, and I know our defense is currently 32nd, but yeah, be the head coach now.
More seamless transition because you have that guy still in place.
We just saw it in Miami, the Marlins. I mean, it's all of them. Every one of you guys, from the top down, out of here. Let's start this thing over. Let's reboot. I don't think it's just the coaches. I mean, I think front office, whole deal. It's too close, too many friendships, too many, backroom dinners. No, we need to try to win ball games.
But it goes back to the ownership too. I mean, the whole thing. I mean, Gail Benson does not have an heir. And so the succession plan of the organization involves Dennis Lauscha and Mickey Loomis. I mean, these people are part of the succession plan of the organization when she dies.
Yeah, they're not going. I mean, like that they are in the will. They're there. So the highest up you're going as far as like turnover and all that is Dennis Allen. And then you get rid of the DCs and his entire staff. You hold on to Kubiak and company and go find a head coach that's going to bring in their own identity and culture and start filling slots. And like Ryan said, get rid of a large chunk of this roster because contracts are too heavy, their play is too bad, and move on. Get a whole new roster, whole new staff, and onward we go.
Like, do you fire? If you didn't, then what do you do with the succession? Like, it's a very complicated thing. But to your point, I think that is part of the problem when you're too close. Part of the problem is, like, Mickey Loomis does not have any fear of retribution. I'm not saying anybody should go to work fearful of losing their job. Like that's a crappy way to go to work anywhere. But at any job, there should be a standard of expectation. And when expectations aren't met, yes, there should be consequences for those expectations not being met. And in a high-stakes business like a professional sports franchise, there is much given, but there is also much asked. And when that is not met, people get fired. So,
yeah, I mean, it's
yes.
like whose decision is it to hire the folks? Okay, that's where the problem starts.
It's if there weren't so many layers to it, specifically in New Orleans, the decision is easy. It feels like this were any other franchise, the decision would be made and he'd be gone.
Mm-hmm.
Like you wouldn't be going through this charade anymore. But there's so much interwoven.
I don't know if he would be gone. Talking about Loomis, I don't know if he would be, because I think you get rid of Allen. And then you bring in whoever else, and then that is like the last, like, okay, we'll see how this goes. Because if you're looking at it from just like a million miles away, you know, the end of Sean Payton was fine, and Drew Brees was fine. Then there's a couple of years there where it's a complete disaster, where, you know, quarterbacks are getting hurt, starters are getting hurt. You know, you're ended up with Trevor Siemian. You know, like, there's 14 different starting quarterbacks, and then you go get, Winston, he's hurt. Then all of a sudden you have Dalton, and then you have Carr, and then, but it's actually Carmichael. And then you have this year where everything looks cool. Not to mention you win 7 games, and then you do have a 2-game uptick. You go to 9, so things are trending upwards. Like, you know, I mean, it's certainly not the results you want, but I don't know if Mickey would be the one getting fired. And if it was a different organization, I think you would definitely. I think the track is kind of consistent. Like, fire the offensive coordinator. Okay, now it's on DC or Dennis Allen as the DC / head coach, and then you fire him. And then if that doesn't work, yeah, then the GM would probably get looked at. But yeah, I think we're kind of on the normal trajectory of how this would work.
Connective tissue with all the layers of the organization that's very hard to unwind, which makes this complicated. And I don't know that it gets any better here in a week from Sunday when they go to LA to play the Rams. Or excuse me, to play the Chargers. Hey, thanks.
Okay, there you go, ladies and gentlemen. Do you think players have quit on Dennis Allen? Do you think it matters? Let me know in the comments below. Thank you very much for watching, and I will see you in the next video.